In section 5-3, we're going to talk about a dishonored check and what you do in that situation and why it might occur. And then finally, we're going to do 2 journal entries, one for an electric funds transfer and one for a debit card transaction. So a dishonored check is a check that a bank refuses to pay, and there's lots of reasons that this could happen. One of the reasons that a check could be dishonored is if there's non-sufficient funds. So the person who wrote the check for $100 actually only has $50 in their account, then that check would be considered a non-sufficient funds check, or NSF, and the bank will not do anything with that. Oftentimes, a dishonored check becomes an expense to the business because the bank charges a fee for handling that, which is the first bullet point on your reading guide. So a bank, if they are constantly dealing with checks that don't have enough money to be paid or other issues, that could get to be pretty burdensome. So they charge a fee to really discourage this from happening. The transaction will be the amount of the check and the fee when we do the journal entry here in a second. So reasons a check could be dishonored, lots of reasons. But go ahead and simplify these down. Number 1, if the check appears to be altered. So if maybe the number was written in 2 different types of ink, maybe it looks like some extra zeros were added in, that could be a reason that a check would not be cashed or deposited by a bank, would be considered dishonored. The signature on the check does not match the signature on the signature card. We talked about that signature card in 5-1. Step 3, reason number 3, the amounts written in figures, so numbers, and the amount written in words do not match. Number 4, the check is post-dated. Remember, that's a check that's written for a date in the future. A bank will not do anything with that check. Number 5, the person who wrote the check has stopped payment on it. So maybe you wrote a check to someone for an item, and then the item that arrived was not the item you were expecting. You might stop that check because you don't want it to get cashed because you didn't get what you purchased. So you could stop a check. And then number 6, the amount that the person wrote the check for, they don't even have that amount in their bank. That would be an insufficient funds check. So when this happens, we need to do a journal entry. The journal entry in this situation, the transaction will be the amount of the check originally tried to be cashed. So if we received a check from Valley Landscaping for $185, which is how much they owe us, the bank said that for whatever reason they cannot cash that and they're going to charge us a $40 fee. Well, we need to make sure that Valley Landscaping not only writes us a new check for the original amount they owe us, but also add on that $40 fee because we are not going to pay that fee for them. So accounts receivable is debited for the total amount, $185 plus $40. Cash is credited for that amount to decrease what we originally had debited when we received that cash, but we didn't actually get that cash, so now we need to offset it. And then finally, our source document is a memo. So that is what we do when a check we try to cash is dishonored for whatever reason. That dishonored check not only needs to be journalized, but it also needs to be included on our check stub so that our check stub can be as accurate as possible to show the amount that we have in our bank account. So in the other section, we write dishonored check, just like we wrote service charge. And then the value of that dishonored check, $225. All of these in the other section, anything written in here, is subtracted. So we're going to take our subtotal, 2,112 minus that 225, and we are left with a new subtotal of 1,887 in our bank account based on what we have at our check stub. Next 2 topics are journalizing an electronic funds transfer and journalizing a debit card transaction. These are probably way more common than actually writing a check. Even though we've been talking about checks for the first 5 chapters, really companies use EFT and debit cards a lot as well. EFT is when amounts are pulled automatically straight from the bank without the use of checks or currency. So electronic funds transfer is an automated withdrawal from your bank account. This is going to be recorded in our journal just like we record a check written. We're going to credit cash because the amount came out of our bank account. But the difference is it is going to be a memo instead of a check number. So if we paid Murniak Enterprises $380, we're going to debit that accounts payable to lower the amount that we owe them. And we're still going to credit cash just like we would have if we would have wrote them a check. The difference entirely from just writing a check and from using EFT is the fact that it's a memo and not a check number. So that's the difference. Journalizing an electric funds transfer is going to look a lot like writing a check for a transaction. The difference is the memo. Not only do we have to journalize this EFT, but we also need to update our check stub for that amount as well. But first, we're going to talk about a debit card transaction. It's going to look the exact same as that EFT transaction. No check is written when you use a debit card, but that amount is automatically pulled from your checking account. So unlike a credit card, a debit card automatically pulls the money from the checking account. So again, it's going to look just like our EFT transaction. The only difference is it's a memo instead of a check. When we used to write a check for supplies, it would have been check number 100. Now it's memo number 21. The transaction looks exactly the same, other than that, the memo. So again, like I said, we need to make sure that we get those two recorded in the other section of the checkbook, whether it's a debit card payment or EFT payment, to update the checkbook. But you have to check yourself before you're done with 5-3, so be sure you answer these questions. Maybe pause this video, get the 2 questions answered, and then play the video to check your answers. That is section 5-3.